Yes, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Variety Hour. It's Friday. We're ready for the cricket. We've been up all night. We're still drunk from it. And today I'm joined by Danny McGinlay, who we're going to talk about his wonderful career in the world of banners in a second.
Is this like This Is Your Life, is it?
Basically.
Oh, no.
And, of course, the preeminent sports broadcaster of his generation, Francis Leach.
Thank you, Titus. Hi, Danny. How are you going over there?
Yeah, it's been a tough week.
For people that don't know, the Bulldogs came out this week and announced that for this season, the fans are going to submit banners.
Yes.
So effectively,
which is a very
means you're not.
Yeah. That's the way they're democratising the banners, which is a way of sacking me.
Right.
But so I'm not doing it. I did the first 2 rounds of the AFLW, but from here on in, I'm a free agent.
Gee, they left it a bit late, Titus. He couldn't even put himself in the pre-season draft for other clubs to maybe try to secure his services.
I know. I thought I'd at least be dropped to the 2s and I'd just do the banners for Footscray, but no, nothing.
I feel bad too because they've offered me the gig.
What is going on at your club, though?
It's not my club anymore.
Oh, who do you marry for now?
No, as in I don't work for them officially. Oh, they did say in the press release we're going to find Danny another job, so I'm expected to work in the canteen.
But you still get along with quite a lot of people there. You're still involved in some things. It's just the banners is the...
Banners is no, they want to go in a different direction.
Like a worse direction. You're not allowed to say that, of course, but in a worse direction.
We can talk
a less
about
good direction.
Yeah, I mean, Danny, come on. First they came for Susan Alberti. Then they came for you. What is next? The statue of EJ Whitten out the front.
Haven't you heard about Sid the dog? No, he died. He died the same day that I got sacked. He took all the media hate.
I thought that wasn't a coincidence. I thought that was maybe why you got fired.
Oh, you think? Oh, you're accusing me.
Well, I don't believe in coincidences.
It is tradition after your team loses, you kick your family pet. So I went full hard. No, R.I.P. Sid. Thank you for all your service.
Your service. I think it's a great move. I can't wait till they get a fan to take the Bonts role as well. That's what it's like. It's like, let's get someone less good to do the job.
Oh, well, to put it in I can understand where the club's going from. When I started doing the banners, their marketing campaign was #BeMoreBulldog, which was all about, we're not going to be shy anymore. We're going to be a bit more outrageous. Now
what's the new hashtag? Be more boring. Is that the new hashtag?
It's now #Real Strength, which is it's a bit more like Bevo.
Real strength.
It's
as opposed to fake strength.
Yeah, and that's what I had. That's and Bevo's. It's more in the idea of Bevo, who's understated. Just lets his achievements talk for him. Whereas I'm bang the drum. How good's Danny McGinley's Bulldogs?
What's he done lately for the club?
Oh, I assume he's run some training sessions.
Is he going to get up and do the pre-season comedy event at Peter Gordon's place?
Yeah, and he'll probably kill it because he's good at everything. It's really irritating.
I'm just waiting for the first week of banners now with bated breath.
Yeah, no pressure on the first banner writer for this year to come up with something worthwhile.
Oh, do you know what the worst part is? This was announced, but it's not the biggest footy news. So I'd say 95% of people don't know it. So the first banner is going to be hopefully it's done by some 12-year-old kid, and it's like go Dogs, I love you, and I'm just going to get reamed on social media. What is wrong with you?
You're phoning it in, McGinley, and the spelling mistakes are terrible.
I think I only had one spelling mistake in my entire history.
It's pretty good going.
Yeah, against your boys, the Saints.
Carlton's banner writer last year, which they tried to copy the Bulldogs.
Yeah, Jess Wheeler's his name.
That got ripped pretty hard.
Oh, he did. He had a very bad opener. But then I think he had one of the best banners of the year against Collingwood, which was their 125-year match. He said 125 years since we first beat you is a weird thing to celebrate, but okay. And then on the back it had all of the years that Carlton had beaten Collingwood in the grand final and just said thanks for the memories. That's good.
Now, what's
good gear.
If you had to pick one or two from your time delivering the lines...
Oh, yeah, the retrospective.
We might as well do it here.
This is without notice. Okay, what am I most proud of? In no order, the one I always
because it's like choosing between your children.
It really is. It really is. The one I was most excited.
That, so that's okay.
The one I got most excited about that it got up was the negative gearing one against Melbourne.
Give us the lines.
That was my second favourite.
Oh, okay, Brooke. What was it? At the end of the match, we will be cheering. You'll still be worried about your negative gearing.
It was funny and true.
Yeah, and
I think you did win that game too.
We did, yeah. And man, seeing you guys just being cop that with your home ownership.
Yeah, that's
I'm back to the slum.
And Titus, what was your favourite of Danny's?
My favourite of all time was your one you did, because I think also the moment it was the prelim. Was it the prelim against the Giants?
Oh yeah,
where you had
our club was
found in Blood and Boots. Yours was formed in AFL Focus Group.
Our club was formed in Blood and Boots, not in AFL Focus Groups.
That was a great banner.
Well, the finals is where I really got let off the leash. I remember new CEO at the time, Gary Kent. You guys remember we scraped into the finals that first week against West Coast. No one expected us to win. We were playing over in Perth, and I was in the same boat. I was thinking, well, we're just too injured. West Coast are in red hot form. I don't know if we're going to win. Yeah. So I was sending in like inspirational ones, like you were really proud of your boys. Quotes from the film 300.
So like it was over.
Like you sort of, yeah. And then I got an email back with the only time I ever got this direction from him: go harder.
From who?
From Gary Kent, the CEO at the time.
Right.
And so I immediately, I told this in my stand-up show. I went, is this too hard? And I just found him a picture of an eagle from World War II memorabilia with the line, Hitler would have supported West Coast. And he went, no, that's way too far, mate. Okay, cool. Good to know the line.
Well, the Bulldogs have never won a premiership since you stopped riding their banners. So I think that's just something we should... The curse of Danny McGinlay.
We'll be counting the games as they tick off.
McGinlay's curse.
So I'll be like the goat in the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, McGinlay's curse. Not an STD as we originally thought that would be.
It could be both.
Well, there you go. Well, it's good to make Danny feel awkward to kick off.
I know you guys
feel awkward could be the new segment to lead off Fridays.
You guys have actually been. This will surprise everyone. Titus O'Reilly rang up and was quite supportive for about I think a good 10 minutes before he started bagging me.
Yeah. So, but I genuinely, it does baffle me a bit because I kind of look. I don't know what the club's thinking, but to me it was. I mean, apart from knowing you, I just thought, that's how I got to know you. I didn't even know you that well when you started doing it. And I just thought, it's a point of difference. Like, it was just something that was fun. And I don't know what they're trying to do. Like, are they worried about upsetting anyone or something? None of them were like, they were all, people got the good-hearted nature. It brought a little
sense of joy to it as well.
Yeah, like, it was exciting to see what the Bulldogs banner was going to be. I actually hoped other clubs would get into that more and make that an interesting part, because there's always been a connection in footy between humour and footy. Like,
well, there hasn't always been. They're trying to. There's been great lengths to drum that out throughout the history of the game.
But you know, you got to So it was sort of this thing, and I just don't get why.
Yeah, I don't get it either. But I accept their decision. They're going in a different direction, and you know, this isn't going to diminish my love for the club.
Really? Oh, I would if I was you.
You and Susan Alberti can stand on the hill together, grumbling with one another.
Now I think that'd be a great date. I'm fine. I'd love to do that.
Make sure you bring your accreditation.
Will she get into your show?
Susan, if you come along and bring Nicole Livingston, you can absolutely come to my show.
She's a star. Both of them are.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to talk about that in a bit, but first we should begin. I don't know about you guys, but I was up late watching Australia play in South Africa. Interesting first day.
Well, it was. I mean, they were 3 down for 90-odd at lunch, and you thought we're going to get a really interesting contest between bat and ball. And then once again, we've seen a lot of this in the last little while. Runs have been hard to come by. Yeah. It was certainly the case in the recent Test series against England for the most part. They ground out another 130-odd runs over 2 sessions. So it was a fairly, let's face it, it was a pretty dull afternoon and evening session of Test cricket.
Good cure for insomnia, you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I found it hard to stay up and watch a lot of it. Yeah. I think I stayed up to about midnight.
3 for 2, 5 for 225, wasn't it, at stumps? So it's not. It's funny, Now, I got into a lot of trouble over the summer suggesting that stroke play and making lots of runs in Test cricket was actually a good way to keep people interested. And the purists came after me. They came after me with pitchforks and torches. Oh. How dare you question the value of a succession of maiden overs, you fiend! But it's bloody dull.
No one likes. I love watching. Off. Say, 300 balls, someone's scoring 16. Bill Lawry was my favourite ever player.
Of course he was. The corpse in pads.
Oh, so exciting. There was a famous test match he played in where they only needed sort of like the equivalent of about 3 runs and over, which is hardly high even back then, to potentially win, and instead he ground out for a draw and scored about 1 run and over for a whole day.
Danny, I believe Titus has a pigeon coop out the back as well, and he'll exchange messages via pigeon.
We're rivals in pigeon racing.
I should, full disclosure, I went to the same primary school and high school as Bill Lawry.
Really?
That is my club.
So he's now their second most famous alumni.
Of Wales Street Primary, yeah.
One thing I found very interesting about... First thing I should just mention last night, the crowd. There was less than 4,000 people there. It was like 3,900 and something. Yeah, there's 3,900 and something now. I've made a couple of comments about this on Twitter, and a lot of few people from South Africa, which is the wonder of Twitter, being able to talk to South Africans, I can tell you, leaped in and said, well, it's a weekday here, but less than 4,000 even on a weekday if you're... Australians would take a sickie. Is that not a tradition in South Africa?
It is. What is it? It would have been Wednesday day. But it also, this time of year, see, we're quite smart in Australia. We do start the test around November, December, where you've given up on work for the year. So
you're
taking
in wind down mode?
Absolutely. Whereas now you're in wind up mode, and it's like, all those things we put off to get drunk.
Do you think that's low?
Yeah, it's a problem for Test cricket generally. I mean, because it's very hard to get people outside of the major Test series, like the Ashes, to come to watch Test cricket. They'll probably get bigger crowds across the weekend.
They're saying that. They'd hope to. Because it seats 25,000 and there was 4,000 people there.
Yeah, that's we're talking like the last days of Fitzroy at the Whitten Oval.
You could almost like that, just go, end to end to watch the bowler behind the bowler's arm. Like you used to go and watch Plugger. I remember going out to watch Plugger one day playing for the Sydney Swans when he kicked 15 goals or so against the Fitzroy Lions. Yeah. And you could literally just wander around from one end of what was then the Western Oval to the other to watch him just put on a bit of a masterclass.
Yeah. So how do we fix it, guys? How do we fix South African attendance?
Well, I think you want to get put it onto a rectangle field.
Use a silver ball.
Yeah.
And 10 runs for a 6.
Nothing.
I like
Super this. 6.
I like this.
Super. Just add Super sponsorship into every sport. That's the best way. We should also mention one thing I liked before this all kicked off is Australia actually have asked for the stump microphones to be turned off during the coverage. I wonder why they want the stump microphones to be turned off.
Yeah, when they're looking at they're going, this South African demographic, I don't want them to be offended. You're planning some harsh sledges.
Yeah, that's right. Because it says here that Channel 9, when they broadcast in Australia, they have a microphone fader for the stump mics that they turn up as the delivery's coming in, and then very quickly after that turn it down,
now,
so they can sort of sledge. Person. Yeah, they can sort of sledge and doesn't get picked up.
Wouldn't that person have the best stories? They've got to write a book anonymously.
Yeah, or just heard off mic, basically.
Yeah, that would be so cool.
Well, because then they had the... so then in South Africa, the broadcaster there, they tend to not be so responsive. They tend to just leave the mics on the whole time. So naturally, everything gets picked up. And so the Aussies have actually asked... And it's a bit like asking for the cameras to be turned off, like in a police interview or something. Like, nothing's good.
Yeah, you're pleading the Fifth Amendment.
I mean, we often, during this podcast, get people writing and asking for the mics to be turned off. Do you think this is strange, Francis?
They're just very sensitive, aren't they? They want David Warner to be David Warner. Let the warthog run free.
Let David be David.
Let David be David. Did you see because then he would come up with some gold. Did you see during the week that he flagged a possible new career for himself?
He did, a political career.
Yeah, from the front bench to off the front foot to the front bench.
How did he do this? I completely missed this story.
Tony Abbott, he fronted Tony Abbott, shirt-fronted Tony Abbott.
Ate an onion with him. In an onion eating contest.
To ask for some funding for like the local oval, I think, in his
Maroubra. In eastern Sydney.
Yeah, so he said, and that kind of, he said, got him interested in politics. So I don't think that necessarily means he's going to run as a Liberal. We don't know what he's going to run as.
There's no chance of that.
But
he
because
would
he's a
never
working
be allowed back
class.
to Maroubra ever
that's
again.
Right. So, but he has said he's interested in politics. And at first, my first reaction was, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then all the stuff that has happened, like the whiteboard with Michaela Cash this week, and just the stuff that just happens across all the various things, all the citizenship and all this. I suddenly thought, in the federal parliament, David Warner would be probably one of the more sensible ones.
Can I remind you who's in the White House right now?
Exactly.
What are your standards are very way off. But I just had an idea with the stump mics.
Yeah.
You know how you have to press red for Ed? And it's the biased Eddie Maguire commentary. Can you press red to hear Stump Cam the whole time?
The stump mic the whole time.
And you have to agree that you're over 18 and you won't sue.
Press blue
that's right.
Yeah, press blue for blue.
There we go.
They're working blue, boys. It's
Imagine if in the age of Ian Healy sledges to Juno Ranatunga.
I tell you what, they all say, you're right, if it could also, you could listen to the stump mic and not the actual Channel 9 commentary.
Oh, man, I would love that.
No matter how offensive what's being said on the on the field, it would be much better than what you're hearing on Channel 9.
Channel 9 would be onto this, and they would be having a chat to Steve Smith saying, hey, just about every third over, could you talk about how excited you are that Married at First Sight's coming back?
Using the slips. I almost got him there. By the way.
Jeez, here come the Habibs. Is pretty epic.
So that was sort of an interesting... We'll see how we go the next few days, but some people are saying that it was sort of a bit of a draw last night, but I thought South Africa got a few key wickets.
Yeah, 5 for 225. So Australia, you'd think, would be happy with 350, and they'll have to get them pretty quick, I reckon. But it's usually a great Test series. This one, I'm always rapt to see like a guy who's completely not fit for purpose become a great sports person. And Vernon Philander has got to be. He's got the tub tummy from 5 Christmases. Like
he gives the hope to all of us.
Don't you think? And then he delivers these fantastic, quick breaking balls and balls that move off the seam and takes wickets. It's not too late for you, Titus. It's not too late. I'm telling you.
When you said not fit for purpose, I thought you were going to talk about the Marsh brothers. But,
well, after their recent heroics.
I know. They're suddenly... The other thing that was on last night, and who doesn't have a Thursday night where you can sit down and watch Test cricket and footy at the same time, was GWS took on Collingwood up at the University of Western Sydney, I think it was. And
I was in Canberra. Manuka.
I was in Canberra, was it?
Or Manuka, if you're from New Zealand.
Manuka. And...
Isn't that a kind of honey?
Yes, but where's it from? Don't. It's Pavlovian.
They had 3 of the 6 light towers went out in the first quarter. What is it with the JLT series and lighting?
Well, they keep playing it at ovals where you don't normally play, so people are a bit freaked out by. So it is nighttime, but there is sunlight. It is witchcraft.
As you pointed out, Titus, it's the science of light that the AFL has come to terms with. Still not used to having 36 bodies in the one place at the one time. Obviously, sucking the light out of the atmosphere and turning it dark.
The black hole of AFLW players can somehow absorb light.
Well, that's shining light.
They're like reverse vampires?
Yeah, that's right. For those that didn't hear, the AFL actually said that one of the reasons they need more lights for the men's game was there are more players on the field. And still one of the great things that the AFL spoke. I mean, it's to say that that's the dumbest thing the AFL has ever said, that's really Hall of Fame stuff. Like, that's a Melbourne Cup field.
But I think they thought they could get away with it because they're probably thinking there aren't too many scientific types.
And these are footy fans.
Yeah.
But it made me think when the 3 lights went out, why don't they start just pulling off a few of the players, have a few less on the field?
Getting them off the field.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I realised as I said that. That's a terrible turn of phrase.
Because you can do that in the dark. Unfortunately, won't notice.
Unfortunately for Collingwood, the lights actually came back on, and the rest of the game had to be played. And Collingwood didn't. They looked like they were still playing with all of the lights off.
Yeah, they really fell away.
Did you guys see this game last night?
I saw, not highlights from a Collingwood perspective, but I saw the highlights reel this morning. Do we care so much? It's hard not to. Look, the eternal pessimist in me watched St Kilda on Wednesday night and immediately going, look at this bunch of B graders, blah blah blah.
You went so existential, Francis. He was texting me just going, I just don't feel I'm ever going to see a premiership.
I know, for real. What is that? You're at the Westgate, mate.
It's the JLT
just
series.
lies beneath the surface by this far.
Yeah.
You know what it's like,
I
Titus.
do that. I've been like in games that Melbourne have gone on to win substantially. I've been in the first quarter going, we're the worst football team in the history of time, which is actually still true. But at the same point, then you go around and wallop the other side. But Collingwood looked abysmal. They were last night, and I know it's too early, but I'm writing off their season.
Well, they did have Chris Mayne playing, and I think that warrants an investigation. Is it some sort of tax dodge now that he gets to play to justify his salary in some capacity? That
I know.
What's going on?
Mayne, you're at centre forward. Bring a receipt.
Exactly.
Well,
bring your accountant. We'll do the numbers.
On that line, I had someone tweet to me last night in the middle of the games, and it was a Collingwood supporter said he should be arrested for obtaining money by financial deception.
Well, it's not his fault they paid him a fortune and then decided he wasn't worth a brass razoo.
Well, it is interesting because I think the only reason he got a game is about 8. A brass razoo.
Brass razoo.
Add that to a tree full of figs.
I think by the end of this year, Francis, we're going to have a whole book of when Francis sounded like a 19th century prospector. A brass razoo, write it
Put that
down.
on the list, Danny.
But they knew the lights weren't working that well, and there was a plan put in that there would be no quarter time break, and they would play until it was seriously like when you're a kid, it's like, all right, we'll play till Mum calls us in for tea.
That's right. That was it.
And then when she says, tea's ready, you got a couple of minutes, and then you look at each other and go, next goal wins.
Yeah. And then they were tweeting out, I think it was, I'm not sure if the AFL or Channel 7, someone tweeted out, it's okay, we've got the lights fixed. They wanted some big, we got lights to work. Amazing.
I think what we've learnt here is that Collingwood players are a bit scared of the dark.
They do have about 8 of their best injured at the moment, and it was the JLT. So it's not, you can't read everything, but it wasn't like a star-studded GWS team, and it it was more the way
they had Ryan
played.
Griffin playing, so...
Yeah. Whoa.
Still hurts. Maintain the rage.
It was interesting, it's the way they played. The Collingwood fans on Twitter were going nuts.
Well, they are on, a tight watch, aren't they? Because every game where they don't perform is another game closer to being, justified in their anger at Nathan Buckley being given another go.
Yeah, well, what they just obviously need is a whole of club review. Don't they do that every year now? A top to bottom review that's going to fix everything. Well, that was interesting. Who would have thought that the AFLW, when it started, they announced that it was free entry, which it still is, and it would still result in more stories about people not being able to get into the games than anything else. So we had your mate, Susan Alberti.
Everyone's mate. She's a wonderful person.
Who's on the outer, just like you at the Western Bulldogs. Well, we had turned away last week. And this week we've had Chris Judd. He showed up. He's the director of Carlton now and... led Carlton to numerous premierships. He didn't lead them to any premierships, did he?
Do you want to be the director of Carlton? I think the director of Carlton would just call himself Alan Smithy.
So he turns up to Princess Park on Wednesday night for the AFLW and walks up and doesn't get let in to the key entrance because he doesn't have a ticket. And the security guard stops him.
I love that. Security guard is like, mate, don't you know who I am? Nah, get out of here.
Yeah. So he then went to another gate and they let him in there. So crisis over, guys. Don't get too worried.
Although, by the way, Alberti could have done that as well.
Exactly. It's free entry. This is what I don't get. It's free entry. Do you think... this was amazing to me because not only is Chris Judd a Carlton champion and a member of their board, he did save the environment. So, if we remember correctly, so why is he getting this sort of heat?
It's just disgusting that a genius like Chris Judd, who single-handedly is going to revitalise the Great Barrier Reef, is not allowed to go and watch his beloved football team as he's taking a little bit of time off from reducing greenhouse gas emissions for
He really
Australia.
is. He's Captain Planet, isn't he? He's a hero. He's going to take pollution down to zero.
But all these people are turning up without the proper accreditation to the... It's free entry to the game. So
I don't think JLT is free entry. Which
Not
is,
JLT, this was AFLW.
But it was a JLT game.
He was in a JLT.
It was against St Kilda,
Right.
So Judd should have realised the attendant was doing him a favour.
Stopping him going in,
Stay away, mate. It's not worth it.
Danny, I think the reason why he wasn't let in, it was so dark that the attendant couldn't see his accreditation anyway.
If only they had more lights.
That's it.
There were too many tickets in his hands.
So anyway, apparently some staff members saw him be rejected, so quickly ran round to the next gate where he was going to try and get in and organise for him to go in. So that's nice, isn't it?
In case he got really angry. You know, that Judd temper that's so famous.
Got the attendant in the chicken wing.
Chicken wing tackle, that's it, yeah. Or maybe use that, what was it, that pressure point tackle? Remember that one against, was it
He
against,
had a bit of form of not being the cleanest player,
he
Judd.
had a few sneakies.
Just a few.
But he's just so gosh darn likeable. You know what I mean? He's just
a Carlton person.
I know, but that smile.
Oh, here we go. Are you going to start riding the banners for Carlton?
What's that? I think it was just a pitch. I think he's just pitched himself to Princess Park.
Navy Nina, you have my number. And if you don't, I'll give it to you.
Well, they've got about 7 Friday nights, so they're a good one to get onto.
Really? Yeah, all right. Okay.
Just a word, I thought they looked pretty good on Wednesday. It's only SBC, only JLT. But
I read that from your tweets.
Who are they playing, though? They're only playing St Kilda.
This is true. This is true. Oh, woe is me.
Well, you're going to make finals this year, aren't you? It's a dead cert, isn't it?
We're going to win the premiership, aren't we?
Mate, hey, this is what everyone's saying. It happens in threes, the drought-breaking years.
It's
between you two. It's between
Melbourne and
Saints.
Fremantle will get there first.
Yeah, I reckon.
We'll still be waiting on the bench.
That's right.
Well, Bulldogs have had an epic one-year premiership drought. It's difficult.
One of the things to people being locked out is Susan Alberti, obviously, in this crisis continues and could tear down the AFL.
Go on, use its proper name. Gategate.
Gategate. It's a saga like no other. It just keeps going on. To the point where the AFL stepped in to resolve what the Herald Sun described. And in fairness to them, I think they're actually just as bemused about this as everyone else. They called it the Susan Alberti accreditation saga.
Oh. Come on, Gategate. Come on.
Gategate, much better. So AFLW boss Nicole Livingston contacted her to guarantee entry to all future matches. Once again, it's free.
Yeah, that's a McGinlay move. That's my favourite joke at a wedding. I'll just get up and go, hey guys, my round. I'll get beers. I'll do that 3-4 times a night. People love it.
I've never noticed you to do that when we're at the pub. So she's rang her to tell her she can get into free. Now, on top of that, she said at every single AFLW game she wants to go to, she's going to be met personally at the gate by Nicole Livingston. Can you imagine Gillon McLaughlin doing this in the men's game?
I'm waiting on a call, Gil.
And says also that either she'll meet her personally or a staffer, an AFL staffer, will be sent down to personally escort her. Now, then the AFL said it's impossible. This is said to her, we can't give you competition-wide accreditation. We're going to have to go down and meet you because we've given them all out for the year. And I'm like, you run the competition? Your printer's not working?
Make another one. But it's
Isn't that amazing?
We're out of that cyan, it always runs out first.
Someone hasn't fixed it. Waiting for Officeworks to deliver.
It's become a sensitive diplomatic issue, hasn't it? In that Susan's contribution to the development of women's football is unparalleled.
Well, she invented it, didn't she?
Just about.
Like no one else had anything to do with it. Let's be honest. There were no other women toiling around for years doing it. It was just her.
Exactly.
It made for some interesting games when she played for the Bulldogs, and then she was also the captain of the Demons.
Listen to you two horrible cynics. But it has become that thing, hasn't it, where it's moved beyond her now in the sense that we've got a competition up and running and her contribution has been acknowledged. And at some point, you do have to take a step back and, if you love it, set it free.
But you can't
sound
show
like
up.
the Bulldogs CEO sacking me.
You can't show up with 9 people and then be annoyed they don't all get in. Through the it wasn't about her, and then she's made it. Then I think it's like they've all behaved I think she behaved badly. She showed up with more people than she should have to the official entrance, which she would have. If it was just her, she would have been.
And they were all bikies.
Yeah,
with Bomber Thompson with her as well. Gee, it's an interesting night out.
They're living with her now.
It's for for a sitcom.
Now that's
It's an odd. Susan Alberti lives with some bikies. It's going to be on Channel 9. It's going to be
I
great.
would pay to watch that. I still love like when Bomber said, he just moved in, what can I do? And I was like, yeah, that happens to so many people we know that I've got a bikie living in my house.
Here's the story of a man named Bomber who was busy with 9 bikies of his own.
So she showed up then. Then Peter Gordon, instead of like ringing her and going, look, is got out of hand. Like,
No, that is what Gordo did.
no, he did. He put out a media release saying he threw petrol
tried to ring
on
her
the
first.
fire. Yeah, but he put out a media release that said, I stand by my staff. And it just like, so neither of them have been willing to like back down at all. And this is where we end up with the AFL having, it's embarrassing.
So they're calling a conference in Geneva next week.
Ooh.
They're going to hold
might go
peace
along.
talks between Susan and Peter.
I'd like to see Donald get involved because nothing would calm the situation more.
Well, Jared Kushner's he's got nothing to do at the moment, so let's get him
I
out.
think it's above his security clearance.
No, Nicole Livingston's going to go down and let Jared Kushner into the two. But yeah, no, was it Liberal MP? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Michael Sukkar?
Yeah.
Sukkar, he's having a dig at
Well, this is
Gordo.
where I found it amazing when you got politicians weighing in.
Yeah, he said no one's done more for the Western Bulldogs and women's football than Alberti. Well, Katie Brennan's played a few matches and Sid gave his life.
Well,
so,
Sid gave all after you tried to
Probably,
kick
yeah, she's top 10, absolutely. But, I'm sure, why would a Liberal MP have a dig at Peter Gordon? That's so weird.
Oh, you think there's something there?
It must be purely about football.
But don't you think it's weird, though? Like, no one has done more for the Western Bulldogs. You just won a premiership in 2016. Like,
Yeah.
I think you could argue Luke Beveridge, yourself with your
well,
banners as your
finally,
concern.
let's talk about the bannerman in the room.
Like, look, she's
there-
obviously done a lot,
Yeah.
but this is just both of them are behaving like children.
Yeah, Titus and Danny, is there something more deep-seated that has, this has been the flashpoint that's brought this to a head, but there's obviously a level of frustration at the Western Bulldogs with something that Susan Alberti has either said or done that's at odds with what Peter Gordon's view of what unfolded in that.
And I'm sure Danny knows, so
No,
why isn't he
genuinely,
telling us?
they shield me from all this. As I said last week,
You're pampered.
They genuinely don't tell the town crier what's going on. All I know is Gordo is genuinely, I think, a great bloke. Susan Alberti, every time I've met her, we've got along, and I think she's a real inspiration. For me, it's like, oh, mum and dad are fighting. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I hope that it all evens out.
I just think, even if they're both wonderful, but it's two people, which happen in footy all the time, with obviously big egos, and maybe based on they have a right to have a big ego.
It's Keating
who
and
are just
Hawke.
clashing,
Yeah.
They're just clashing, but neither of them seems to see that they're damaging something that's bigger than them.
Well-
It's how hard is it
Well,
to
it
just
must
say
be-
to her,
Massive distraction for the fans at this point of the year, and just a little bit of tension out of the Western Oval or the Whitten Oval these days. The fun-free days are gone.
No,
obviously
they seem pretty united on when I had my meeting.
well, as Danny said off air, they're obviously a rubbish club.
Here we go.
Hang on, that was me. Moving on from football, we should move to another football where the Football Federation Australia, who Francis and I know, we were talking about this before we came on air, travelling particularly well at the moment.
Flying. Best pre-season ever.
There's a couple of things they've announced
Burning up the
recently.
That would not surprise me that this whole A-League season has just been a pre-season to next year.
Yeah.
That's what it feels
Is
like.
it on at the moment?
Oh, no, it's disappearing under the waves.
It really is.
Depressing.
The FFA have done two, I think, bizarre things in the last sort of 24, 48 hours.
Only two. They're going well there.
Yeah, which is one, they've hired Danny McGinlay to do.
Yeah, it was between me and that. What was the name of that kid who you've got to have a team, and then he ended up choosing Melbourne City. It was their big advertising campaign for last season.
That's
He had a
right.
Japanese name, but anyway, no, welcome to a new segment. Danny tries to remember things.
So the FFA, they've come out and they're trying to trademark a chant sung by the Western Sydney Wanderers active support group, as they're all called,
The red and black block.
who are in a bit of trouble at the moment with which we'll go into. But they sing a chant that goes along with "We Sing for Wanderers," and the FFA, who haven't come up with the chant, have lodged a trademark application for it. Is this one of the strangest things you've heard to try and
Almost-
actually trademark saying it's not. You didn't even come up with it.
They're such a tinny organisation that whilst they're at war with their red and black bloc, how do you even trademark that to then probably use it in a commercial setting, maybe in their promo at some point? It's just
they'd want to print it on scarves or something.
It's just crazy because at the moment
but they didn't invent it.
No,
but who did? It's clear.
We sing for Wanderers.
But that would be. Surely that's stolen from a European club. There must be who we sing for. We sing for, I don't know, Blackburn Rovers or something.
Yeah, but all of those things are, aren't they? They belong to the terraces, not to the...
Yeah, that's right. It certainly annoyed the red and black.
Well, it doesn't take much to annoy those.
Well, the amount of stories that get written as, someone who would like, football in the A-League to actually grow in this country, the amount of stories, and I know that if anything negative happens at a football match, the News Corp, etc., leap on it.
Yeah.
But they do tend to spend a lot of time with the active support areas, whether it's for the Melbourne Victory especially, and also Western Sydney Wanderers. And I think the Sydney FC have had this problem too. They seem to often be at war with the clubs and the FFA, aren't they?
Yeah, they feel often the active support feels that it's got a greater stake in the direction of the game than it does in any other sport. Like they generate the atmosphere and the culture on the terraces, which they see as a major selling point for the A-League. And when it was good, and it has been great, for instance, with the North Terrace in Melbourne and even the Cove, when they're up and going and they sound great, there's no better experience than being one of those games. No, it is. It's really good.
But they're much more organised as well. Like they're much more an organised group than in, say, an AFL club where you've got the tiny cheer squad and then the rest of we're all just fans, but we don't organise.
It's a different culture.
Different culture around supporting it. And so, if you talk to some of the people at Clubland, it's like having to deal with politics in the Balkans. I mean, even the old North Terrace had about 7 or 8 factions. It was like it was like living in the West Bank.
I used to stand in Southend, and we just used to stare at them, going, "Get it together! What? How can you not feel getting along?"
They were falling apart and fighting amongst themselves.
They were just fighting amongst each other, going, "No, we're better at chatting. We're better at chatting." And it seemed to be they were the ones who were the true idealists of, we got to sing this song and we're going to throw things, we're going to have flares. And Southend was all a bit older guys, and we're like, we're just here for the beer and the football. Yeah. We're just going to drink and sing and hope we win.
Yeah, it was a different feeling if you're at a Melbourne Victory game between the two ends.
Yeah,
and then Northern stopped coming. They wouldn't stand in their spot for a while. Remember that?
It was about 12 months or more that they basically became inactive. They still came to the games and they still supported, but they didn't actually organise to be active support.
And they did really cool things where they'd be quiet for the first 15 minutes and then go nuts no matter what was happening. That was actually really effective.
Bit of a culture jam
at
football.
Yeah, it was
and it's a real shame because the Red and Black Bloc in particular have known for a long time they were on very thin ice in relation to the use of flares. And, you can't police everybody that comes into a football game, and there's always going to be one dickhead that feels that it's their right to let one of those things rip. But the consequences for the game are significant, and, it's an easy mark, as you said, for people who fight
enemies of the game.
Yeah. But also on the other side of that, there's a lot of people within football, and I'm very much a football person, as you know, who are just super sensitive to all of that and like to or have almost boxed themselves into a position of being victims. And it just... it does nobody any good to sort of...
Well, they attack you massively. They
do.
I've been a member of the Melbourne Victory since year 1 and go a lot. And I remember I regularly will get attacked on Twitter going, well, you must be nice being an AFL supporter. You hate our game. And I'm like...
I wrote some pieces for...
Come on.
I wrote some pieces for the Herald Sun about soccer and they were like, why is an AFL guy writing this?
I get it.
You get that as well?
I still get it.
Why is this heavy metal guy writing about us? But it's this 19th century prospector.
Yeah, exactly. I don't give a tree of figs for anything Leach says. I wouldn't pay a brass razoo for anything he's writing.
Well, I think what is actually happening is this is a money-grabbing idea. And I think it's genius.
This is the trademarking.
The trademarking. So what they're going to do, the FFA, they've trademarked the chant. You go to the next Wanderers game, they sing the chant, they go, that's breach of copyright, you got to pay us money.
Royalties.
They're going to raise so much cash for the FFA. That's a smart idea. Do you know what else they've trademarked? Over at Victory, they've trademarked Musket Out. So they'll make millions off that. At Adelaide, they've trademarked Sack the Board. They're already trillionaires. And
for Sydney every year.
And Sydney fans, they've trademarked, why isn't anyone here?
This is a bad time for me to mention that I'm trying to trademark your banners.
My dad works in publishing, book publishing, and he said, who owns the intellectual property of banners? And I texted the president because he's a lawyer and he never got back to me. But can someone, if anyone's a legal expert...
Is there anything in writing?
No, nothing.
Oh, interesting. Well,
there we go. Maybe we can make some T-shirts.
But, this isn't like this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is for you to group source legal advice.
Isn't it? What the hell am I doing here?
While we're at that, anyone got advice on what it technically is embezzling? I'd be really keen to hear from you.
The Variety
Asking for a friend.
Yes, the Variety Hour Pro Bono edition.
So while the FFA are fighting, and it's actually got to the point where a bunch of flares were let off recently at Western Sydney Wanderers game.
At the game against Sydney, the Derby.
The Derby,
yeah. And they're now talking about at the next game basically not having a crowd there almost, like not letting the active supporting... not letting them come and be very quiet and not have all of that happening, not let into that active area.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting, like where that's going. So this is all happening in the context of that as well.
Because the A-League's flying and it can afford right now to have internecine civil war because, the money's just raining from the skies, the television ratings are through the roof, and it's just going so well.
Do you think the thing that is weird about the flares is it seems like the more they try and crack down on them, the more it almost happens. Like it's become like almost this, celebrity cause that they have to fight over,
Well, I think in the last 12 to 14 months, it's actually abated quite significantly.
Yeah, that's because there's no one there.
That might be part of the reason. But, there's always going to be someone who's going to want to, lift the middle digit to FFA headquarters. Did you see the T-shirts that some of the red and black block guys were wearing, which was, FCK, the FFA, in that Run DMC style font?
Oh, nice.
Right.
So they've gone out of their way.
For them to actually wear any shirts, it's a bit of a win.
Is the FFA trying to trademark them too?
Probably should. They need every revenue source that they can find.
So given the FFA currently are at war with quite a few fan groups around the country, have diminishing ratings and crowd attendance, have lost their national coach right on the cusp of the World Cup, having FIFA coming out and telling them how to run the competition.
Get to the bad news.
Are at war with the state bodies and the Players Association, which is all true, isn't it? These are just facts. You would, of course, therefore, give an extension to their CEO, wouldn't you? Like, it would make sense. So it was announced in the last few days that David Gallop, who was formerly at the NRL, has been appointed, given a contract extension of 2 years, which will take him up to November 2020, which means he'll have been in the job, if he stays that long, for 8 years. Now, the game's done nothing but really kind of decline under him in some ways.
Massive.
Leslie under the last 3-4 years. Is this... You're in touch more with me than the soccer community. So is this just... But going off the social media action, it seemed bewildering that they've done this and not appreciated.
Massive corporate coup. Massive corporate coup because they would have been queuing up at the door for David Gallop services.
In other sports, yeah.
I reckon...
I heard Greyhound Racing wanted him.
The only logical explanation is he's a mole. He's working for Demetrio. Demetrio put him in years ago, and even though Demetrio's been whacked, he's still there.
That's Ben Buckley. That was the theory around Ben Buckley's appointment
that he was in
that
that
role
room
previously.
There we go.
The NRL and AFL will be wrapped with this announcement, surely.
They've got... I think there's probably an element that he's maybe said, well, look, depending on what happens with the FIFA AFC review
sort of thing, yeah.
I want some security or tenure so that in the event that I'm moved out of my role, that you then have to negotiate with me some sort of payout. That's the only logical conclusion I can come to, that they would reappoint him without a wider search for who's available. Maybe it's a case that they don't have the coin to find a suitable person of that at that stature at the moment to come in and play that role.
Titus and I'll do the job.
Yeah, there we go.
We'll give it a go.
Yeah, we're both looking for work. What I don't get is, if that's the case, you've got this point where you're at war with everyone. Surely there's either an opportunity to go, can we find a CEO who's going to do a bit of uniting, be appealing to FIFA a bit more, be appealing to the clubs and the state bodies, and use this as a circuit breaker, because his contract was running out at the end of this year. Use it as a circuit breaker, actually try and change the direction of the relationship between the FFA and everyone else. And instead they've sort of gone, not only we're not even going to consider that, we're just going to do 2 years. And if you're a board and your view is you're doing it for those reasons, which I agree is like it's uncertain tenure because FIFA could take over the whole thing or spill the board or do whatever in the next few months. Let's give him a 2-year contract. So if he does get fired, we pay him out. If you're a board with financial responsibility for a competition or for a business, that's terrible. To give someone an extension because you think that they could be sacked.
But why does any of this surprise you the way this game has been governed in the last?
No, it doesn't necessarily surprise me, but it's just more of the...
I think they did that to impress FIFA of look how corrupt we can be. Very good, FFA, very good.
You'll end up running FIFA eventually. I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? Like, there's just no logic to this announcement.
But the bigger picture is, the overarching picture is Stephen Lowy remains, at the head of the FFA board when a circuit breaker, that's what you said, Titus, is absolutely required to unite all the state federations and the A-League clubs, which have completely lost faith in the chairman of FFA and in any relationship with the board in delivering an outcome that they want, which has got to be maybe an independent A-League where they're off the leash financially to go and source the sponsors they want. They work in the stadiums the way that they want to generate revenue. And it's just not going to happen until there's somebody else in charge. And a football person, Lowy's been great. The Lowy family have been great in giving the game a second chance.
But they should have moved. It shouldn't have gone to his son.
No, well, my point has always been that their biggest challenge was building the game to a point where it could exist beyond the influence and the direct control of the Lowy family. And they didn't do that. They never could quite. A bit like Susan Alberti, they're finding it hard to let it go because they love it so much and the consequences are significant. So there you go.
Is it time that Clive Palmer's alternate steps in?
I'm still waiting for... Remember the Football Australia? Their slogan?
Yeah.
We kick harder. That's what it was. And they had that Royal Commission. They had... Where is that report? Whatever happened to that report?
They had the former CEO...
Archie Fraser, former CEO of the St Kilda Football Club.
So Archie Fraser, who was...
Great man, Archie.
Is he?
Great fella.
Because he moved St Kilda to Seaford, which is unmitigated disaster.
Genius move.
He then went and ran... Was it the A-League?
The FL. Yeah, he was head of the A-League.
Head of the A-League. Then he decided to leave that to go work with Clive Palmer as the CEO of the Football Australia. He did. He was announced as the CEO, and it never really happened.
It was a bit Trumpian, wasn't it?
It was not a great. It was not a great.
For all
career.
we know, it's still working. He's in an office somewhere.
He's like the Japanese soldier that doesn't know it's over, stuck on the island.
Did you see that Clive's thinking?
Clive not doing this?
Clive's thinking about having another run at politics.
No, I've not seen Clive in the media at all.
He must need the money.
Watch this space. Remember the Gold Coast United freedom of speech game where they wore the...
They were mad. And he shut all the various grandstands.
Yeah.
He was another one that went to war with the fans.
Yeah, they had FFA Save GCU T-shirts. A lot of the well, let's be honest, the fan was wearing.
Yeah.
Glory days of the A-League.
Oh, just another success on the Gold Coast for sport.
Yeah. It is the dead zone.
So I highly recommend to anyone listening, if you just want to laugh, go on to, I think it was Football Confidential, the Twitter account, which is the News Limited one. They tweeted this news of David Gallup being reappointed for 2 years.
No,
the replies,
oh man,
they're actually funny. People have not gone just the...
Okay.
They've not just sworn or anything, but they've actually come up with very clever responses.
But I will give the case for the defence in a sense as well. Won the Asian Cup under his tenure, which was a great result, and has qualified for successive World Cups. So it hasn't been all failure.
Right.
It's easy to sort of paint it all.
And are we talking about Postecoglou now?
How many goals did Gallup score in that? No, but I think you're right in that it seemed to me that the Lowy the second era...
Lowy the younger.
Yeah, given it sort of runs along like a royal family where it's passed down to the oldest son, it seemed to me that it got off to an okay start. And then, so he's been there 8 years. So the first 4 years, you would say was okay, but it's really fallen off a cliff rapidly.
Yeah, you need a turnover in that role to generate new ideas. I honestly think, and they've had this with John O'Neill, Ben Buckley, and now David Gallup, they need a football person, someone who understands the culture of the game in that role. Surely a game as wide and as big as soccer or football has people at that corporate level who have an understanding of the sport, probably have relationships within the football federations, understand the terrain there, and can actually work to find some sense of common ground. There'll never be unity because it's just so, it's so diverse and so difficult to get everybody around the same table. But somebody who's got skin in the game. David Gallop wasn't a football person, and I'd imagine that once he finishes his time at the FFA, he's not going to think, about joining,
North Queensland Fury.
Yeah, North Queensland Fury, or
he'll be out.
He'll be out. So I think that
this
they need
is
a football person.
Lowy and him. We're in the trenches together, so
Yes.
I'm giving you the certainty that you're in the trenches with me. Why is the next person to run it Mark Bosnich?
And Robbie Slater. Robbie will just go around headbutting everybody into submission. You haven't been in football until Robbie's physically threatened you. That's
really?
Really?
Oh, man, I've not been in football.
When did you get into football then?
God, sometime in December last year.
Really?
Yeah, to go with me. That's all right. I've known Robbie for
In person or on the phone?
On the Twitter. On the Twitter.
Oh, what did you say?
That's worse.
Yeah.
Because there's an audience. Did you and him had a bit of, what did you say that set off Robbie?
I made just a sort of little clip saying he made some comment. This is before Ange had decided to quit, and he was making some comments in regards to Graham Arnold. And I said, the Minister for Graham Arnold's putting a good case for his next job. And Robbie's
good line.
He got very sensitive about it, and then had a real crack. I thought, wow.
Well, because Graham Arnold's not the answer to any question.
Now, I think he'd be a good manager. I think
what level? Victorian Premier League? Or?
No, he's dominant with Sydney FC.
He's got
Graham
to start
Arnold
up and running.
has probably been responsible for the best moment of A-League I've seen in the last 3 seasons. Were you at the semi-final where Victory beat Brisbane Roar in 2017, and Sydney had qualified for the grand final the night before, and he was in the crowd. He was sort of in a corporate box by himself, and we're 2-0 up against Brisbane Roar, and the cameras cut to him, and the whole crowd just started booing him. Yeah. But then he did like proper pantomime villain. What? Why are you booing me? It was genuine good comedy chops.
What I love about Arnie is that he's a very funny guy, and he does at least give the A-League a sense of, like a bit of WWE vaudeville.
And like Muscat would be a very good villain, but I think he thinks he's the hero. Well, yeah, no, Muskie should play up the villainness a lot more, be the heel.
I know. Problem is he's becoming the villain to the Victory fans. You want the other supporting team, not the... So will he last? Muscat?
Well, that's interesting. I think they need to finish in the top 4 and win a final. But look, he's been there since day one as a player and a manager.
Yeah, it'd be a big thing for him. It's like letting go Danny McGinley from the Bulldogs.
That'll never happen. Oh. If you're having troubles, call Lifeline on 13 11 14.
I think that you've mentioned that every episode.
Well, mental health is very important.
Are you suggesting that anyone who's listened this long into this podcast seriously needs help? That's what you're actually saying.
I was going to say, are you suggesting anyone that listens to this podcast doesn't know that number off by heart?
Most of them have got it carved into their arms.
On that note, and thank you to our sponsor, Lifeline. We will be back next week. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Hey, next week I'm on in Brisbane at the Sit Down Comedy Club. Premiership Hangover. Please come.
And do you want to announce your thing yet, or are we keeping it a secret?
No, I should mention it. Sports Writers Festival is getting up and running with a couple of pop-up events. Details early next week on 2 AFL-related events with Conrad Marshall, talking about Yellow and Black, the Tigers book, and the great Martin Flanagan talking about exciting. A Wink from the Universe.
Which is the cracking... I've read the Martin's book, and beautiful. I'm about to read Conrad's because he's going to come on the podcast in the next few weeks, I think. So
brilliant. So we're going to have those March 20 and 27, 2 Tuesday
in
nights,
Melbourne.
Commercial Club Hotel in Fitzroy.
Oh, cool.
Good pub too.
Good
footy
atmosphere,
pub.
talking about the books, talking about how they wrote them and all that sort of stuff and having a bit of fun.
If I show up without a ticket, will I get in?